Welcome to the Talking Transformation podcast, presented to you from Cape Town here in the Western Cape, South Africa. The podcast is presented with a view to providing a platform and voice for built environment professionals and interest groups who are working towards transforming the places and spaces here in South Africa. It's dedicated to the individuals and community groups who are supporting both the formal and informal processes that are shaping our cities and our spaces. It's just gone 5:45 here in Cape Town, and on the line I've got three colleagues, all of whom are in Cape Town, all of us based in Cape Town today. And we're going to be talking about a new Talking Transformation podcast series that we're going to be launching during the course of February. Tlengiwe Radebe, Megan Houston Brown, and Amal Sali. Let's start with you, Tlengiwe. How are you keeping, and how have you been keeping in this last month or so of 2021?
Thank you, Amal. I'm doing very well. Been a good start so far, and I'm looking forward to the series.
From your side, Megan, how's things your side?
It's good. I started the year with a vow that it wasn't going to be as crazy as last year. That ship has long sailed, but all good.
And our friend Amal, lovely to have you back on the Talking Transformation podcast. We've missed you the last few episodes. How have you been keeping? What's news your side?
I'm good. I'm super happy that the beaches are open again, especially with this upcoming heat wave. So yeah, feeling very excited about that at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not so sure our friends up in Gauteng are so bothered about our beaches and our ability to get back on them. But to those of you listening around the country, it really is good to have you back with us. And all the very best as we move into this February and hopefully a better kickstart to the year. So we're here to discuss a series that we've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 months with Megan and Tlengiwe. They represent an organization called Sustainable Energy Africa. And the theme is going to be this idea of a roadmap to net zero carbon buildings by 2030. Now, that sounds like quite a mouthful for many of us. What is the topic about? Why is it important? And what can listeners expect?
Thanks so much, Pete. And I think it's very timely to be having this discussion, this podcast during the pandemic and the crisis. And a lot of people have referred to the fact that, this is a sort of a taste of what we're going to have to deal with when climate change starts to really grip in on people. The program that we're the sort of local implementing agency. It's around the 4 biggest metros have made a sort of global declaration. They've committed to it. They've pinned their colours to it to take quite ambitious action. They actually are looking to get the entire city to be net zero carbon by 2050 or carbon neutral by 2050. This particular program is specifically looking at new buildings and how we can get policy and regulatory environment in place within our cities to make this quite dramatic change happen. I think the exciting part is it's really about what do you have to do to unpick the kind of structural underpinnings of our very carbon intensive lifestyles and economy. And partly why we're why we were so excited about the idea of a podcast is that the kind of level of ambition that we need to achieve in responding to climate change is not something that cities can do on their own. It's going to require absolutely everybody to be part of this. And cities themselves are having to change their culture and really reach out to absolutely everybody in the city and to start to generate a narrative together about how we tackle this problem.
And how have we structured the program going forward? I mean, Tlengiwe, do you want to give us a sense of what listeners can expect, the type of guests that we're going to be pulling into this space, and the program, which will be subject to change, but the type of things that we want to talk about in the episodes?
The upcoming program really is looking at introducing people into what this program has been about. It started in 2017 with the 4 cities. So we really want to engage people with some of the issues that have come up in the last 3 or 4 years or so. So in the beginning, we're looking at introducing the program. What is net zero carbon really? We sort of speak about it because some of us know what that is, but most people don't understand it. So we want to see how our cities tackling that. So we're going to have cities engaging on how they are rising up to the challenge to address net zero carbon. And then we go to episode 2 and we look at governance and some of the issues that the cities are responding to, particularly around with climate change coming up. What are the governance issues that cities are having to deal with? And then we take it further to say, well, actually, this is quite big because this is going to change the market. We are saying net zero carbon, you're talking about renewable energy, and you're talking about energy efficiency. How is this going to affect the market? Is the market ready to address this? So we're going to have guest speakers speak to that. And then episode 4 is talk about new buildings, but we don't want to leave anyone behind. We don't want to leave informal settlements behind. We don't want to leave low-income households behind. So how can you bring them into this program? How can you ensure that there's not a gap between them and medium income people and high income earning people? So we will address that. And finally, we'll have a live webinar where we discuss all the issues that have come up that listeners are wanting to engage with, and we'll have lovely guest speakers that will come and address some of those issues.
In summary, episode 1, the way we see it, is going to be around an introduction, a deeper dive into the theme. The second episode, we're going to be looking at the governance structures, the response to the climate imperative. The third element around scaling within the market, the transformation in that building sector, and how we can improve. And you've made it quite clear, this is about the new buildings in the short term. We've got a decade to get that right. There will be other retrofits for the existing stock within commercial space, residential, but that's the immediate ambition. And then the fourth one, I think this is a really important imperative that you've talked about, Hlengiwe, the leaving no one behind, that the informal sector, whether it's in our informal settlements and so forth, how do we embed and encourage that type of lessons that we can learn in that space? Because we recognize that a lot of the cities are growing in that informal space. And so it's no good just talking about the formal sector. So those are the 4 components. And then this very exciting 5th one, the idea of saying during the course of the series over the next coming months, we want to build a database of listeners who would like to participate in the next webinar conversation that we would have at the end of it, and that we can almost start to try and summarize what were the main points. We try and put a bit of a panel together and have people raise their questions in a live webinar form. So there's certainly a lot of ways, A, for people to get involved, and B, to continue the conversation during the course of the months that will follow. And we can talk about websites and so forth as we get into that. We're not alone. There are other partners that are assisting in this, Megan, and perhaps you just want to talk about some of those partners who are going to be potential guests on the discussions, but most importantly, driving with the country, with the cities that are involved, this amazing initiative.
Hlengiwe mentioned that episode of not leaving anyone behind, and it's so important that the program has these deep roots and kind of creates really a southern developing city identity and meaning. But I think on the other hand, what's exciting is the program reaches globally into a global network of cities. So the C40 global network of cities holds the kind of largest and leading climate responsive cities in the world together. And it's a political platform. It's a very powerful grouping of cities. And it was, when we started the program, our 4 largest metros, and Ekurhuleni has now joined the group. So our 5 largest metros are all C40 metros. And that global network really leads city action globally. Through them, the cities committed to this declaration. And then the C40 program has actually funded our technical support into the cities. The mechanism of that support was also through the seeding of 4 technical officers into the cities to really drive and lead this work. And that's been a kind of a creative element of the program as well, because it just so happened that they were all 4 young women, and it's kind of created this new cadre of sort of strong women in the space. That's often traditionally sort of kind of planning and architecture. It's often been quite a male space. Our local government association, as well as the South African Cities Network, are really key agencies that support our municipalities and our cities in the country. And they've been a huge support in this program. And then there's another agency, which is within National Treasury. We have the City Support Program. And why they're so key is because their mandate is really to try to enable where cities can lead. Our framework kind of post 1994 was almost a sort of a one-size-fits-all. There was a sort of a nervous tension about letting cities run ahead because they were at the time slightly seen as sites of privilege, and we needed to kind of bring those neglected rural areas into the picture. But now I think South Africa is really ready to let cities lead. And the City Support Program is there to say, how do we enable cities to really let their economies flourish? Because in fact, cities globally are meant to be economic leaders, and our cities have lagged slightly. So it fits into that, the whole economic framework of doing business in our cities as well.
As the series unfolds, obviously we're hoping to draw in listeners from a range of sectors, and going forward, who do you envision the series to be for?
To answer who should be listening to this, I think firstly, the city officials, I would say, just to learn. I think our organizations are quite lesson sharing. So other cities who are interested in hopefully taking the same path, I should listen to this podcast as to how these 4 cities have done it and what are the challenges they're facing and how are they addressing those challenges. I think building controllers, some of the people that actually approve buildings and say, oh, this building is good enough or not good enough, they should also be listening to see what can they expect in terms of their job changes going into the future. Private sector certainly should be listening, particularly architects and builders, people who are investing in the market, to hear how this is going to transform the market. So this will be particularly important to them. And then the general public, people who are interested to hear actually how is this program going to affect them. When we're dealing with climate change, we really need to start to hear what are the solutions to climate change. And this program is trying to address some of those challenges. And finally, I think funders, city funders, who are looking into to fund some of the programs within cities. This will help them to see what cities are doing and how can they contribute into what the cities are envisioning to achieve for 2030.
I think with any change like this, there are going to be some challenges and some real tough questions that have to be asked because of, how entrenched carbon-heavy systems are in all of our lives. So what are some of the tough questions that we can be expecting to hear over the course of the series?
There's quite an interesting question around, can cities lead? So national has sort of big, broad national interests at heart, and can we afford for cities to sort of break away from that to some extent, and what might be some of the possible threats in that? Other question that a lot of people will pose is, do cities have the capacity to deliver this? So there's, and it's a very typical, I think, quite a South African thing around sort of, but, can we really do this? And it's a valid question. There are already building efficiency requirements on new buildings, and there's quite a varied and patchy sort of application and enforcement of that. So it's a valid question. I think it's a robust debate there. And I think that the most difficult question is possibly this one about the context of economic recession, context of housing backlogs, and as Klengi touched on, the idea of informality being a part of the future. And in that context, is this a kind of a requirement that's going to just place an additional burden on a system that's already overburdened with, commitments, and can we do it? So I think those are the kind of things we need to debate. And sort of in conclusion, and adding a little bit to the issue of who should listen, I think we'd also really like to push it out there that, cities belong to the people who live in them. And really we should all start to be a part of the voice around what kind of city you want to live in the future. And do you want it to be, I think COVID has really raised this issue. Do you want it to be a healthy city? Do you want it to be a city that gets kind of left behind like a BlackBerry telephone? Or do you want it to be a city that's really leaping into what the future requires of our cities?
Some immediate thoughts about how people will be able to think about and get involved through social media platforms, etc.
So the cities have really wanted to approach this kind of iteratively and openly. So they really would like to welcome any input and comment. And I think there's a strong genuineness in that ask. So very specific places people can get involved. The one thing just to note is that the program is developing a smart cities web hub And that hub will be both outward facing to the public at large, as well as the design sector, the sort of technical professionals, as well as sort of government officials. And it'll hopefully contain all the information and have the links into the city-specific information. And then within each city, they will be going through public participation processes, and that web hub would be a lead into that. I'm actually going to hand over to Klenge to talk a little bit about behavior change approach. So the program has also engaged a little bit on sort of better ways of engaging the public, not these kind of narrow, very legalistic public participatory processes that often exclude a lot of people.
Most of us understand net zero carbon. Most of us understand climate change. Let me say, the four of us here understand those things. And the people that we're engaging it in the program understand those terms. But generally, most people in South Africa don't understand what those terms are. When you are talking about net zero carbon, in fact, people don't understand what are you talking about when you say net zero carbon. When you talk about green buildings, in fact, someone said that they were talking about green buildings to someone, and the person thought it was a building that was painted green. So with those things, so people don't understand those concepts. So we thought to bring in people who understand how people sort of understand this, how they can translate what we sort of know, and they can translate it into simpler words and simpler messages. So we engaged with an organization that specializes not just in putting things simply, but understand how people behave as well. So not everyone has Twitter or Instagram. So how can you go to the communities and engage them? What other platforms such as posters can you use that communicate effectively to the communities?
Perfect. Thank you. And when can we expect first episode to be recorded?
I'm really looking forward to that. And that will be recorded in 2 weeks' time on the 16th of February. So just after Valentine's Day.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
So there you have it, colleagues, and there you have it, listeners. A new series. We're looking forward to bringing this to you, and that's why we wanted to record this bulletin, was to at least give you a taste, a flavor of what to expect in the weeks to come. There will be other Talking Transformation podcasts in the meantime, but this is going to take up quite a bit of our time and our resources, and we're really looking forward to bringing it to you. With that, I want to thank very, very much Sustainable Energy Africa, Megan Houston-Brown, Hlengiwe Radebe, and Amal from our side, the Talking Transformation podcast. Always great to have you with us, Amal. And we look forward to hearing from you both in a couple of weeks' time, 16th of February, with the hammer goes down. In the meantime, colleagues, enjoy the rest of your evening, and thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Pete. Thanks, Amal.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Talking Transformation podcast. Please engage with us and let us know your thoughts on this episode. You can do so via the Anchor podcast platform. There's a voice message function available via the app. You can also follow us on Twitter via Talking Transfo and the number 1. So Talking Transfo 1. Our theme music is kindly made available by Tribal Need. Find out about the music, the street art shows here in Cape Town and Europe via tribalneed.com.